Hey Off-White Coat listeners, it is my privilege to get to tell you about this sweet deal from our friends over at Picmonic. If you haven't heard about Picmonic, it is a fantastic picture-based mnemonic platform that can certainly help out any student. Most of the videos are around 2 minutes long and provide a quick and effective way to memorize material for any upcoming medical exam. It is extremely efficient. They have this search bar function where you can search playlists on general topics like renal to step 1 to step 2, or even first aid and other books. If you want to review the Picmonic for later, you can even make a playlist of your own. Picmonic even has this repetition algorithm that is spaced out according to your learning needs. This helps with increasing long-term retention and allows you to review the right information at the right time. One of my favorite functions is the quizzes that are associated with each Picmonic. I'll take the quiz first and then learn about the associated pictures and what facts I need to sharpen up on. Honestly, Picmonic is a fantastic tool, and if you use our code OFFWHITECOAT, you'll get 20% off. That's Off-White Coat with no spaces. So what are you waiting for? Make studying the easiest part of your day. Sign up with Picmonic and use Off-White Coat to save yourself some money. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Off-White Coat podcast. I'm joined today with a special guest. This is the lady that really mapped my whole way out of my medicine career. It started off when I was young. She was in medical school at the time, and they would come home and have discussions about all the fun and gross stuff they had seen, and I swear it established a love for medicine and just taking care of people in general that really carried over for the rest of my life. I'd like to introduce Molly Vicchrilli, Dr. Molly Vicchrilli, a.k.a. Mom. So my mom actually had a very similar trip through medical school as well. She went to AUC, which is American University of the Caribbean. So she spent some time in the jungle as well. She actually got into medical school when I was 5 years old. I went to kindergarten. Yeah, I went to kindergarten in St. Martin. I know since a lot of the people that are listening to this would be medical students, I was just curious about your time. I can't really remember the time when we were in St. Martin, but do you remember anything? Was that too long ago?
Yeah, it was a few years ago. Remember, like what? I
can remember going to Burger King, and that's just about it. And being one of the few white kids in class. I remember, and we went through Hurricane George.
Correct. Yeah. Well.
But how did you decide to go to a Caribbean medical school to begin with?
Let's see. When I first started college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then I had Jordan when I was 19, my freshman year in college.
How was a surprise?
Yes. And then probably halfway through my college career, I decided that I wanted to pursue something in medicine. I wasn't sure what, whether it be nursing, maybe PA school. However, that was kind of brand new at that point. And then one day I just decided, well, I'll just try to go to medical school. And so I took the MCAT. I did okay on it, but not well enough at that point to get into a U.S. school. There were, I think, maybe one or two DO schools at that time. I think one was in West Virginia, and I got on the waiting list. And then I just had done some shadowing with a couple people, and that's really where I learned about Caribbean medical schools. And so I just looked into it and applied and got in, and
the rest is history.
Yeah, the rest is history. I didn't really know what I was getting into at the time.
Is there anything that makes you happy that you went to St. Martin? I guess you got a jump start on your medical career. Something that you're glad you did?
Well, yeah,
that makes it a little different. Yeah,
it was different. I mean, obviously, as far as the ease of going through and getting residencies and things like that, it would probably have been easier going to a U.S. medical school. However,
that's very reassuring.
Yeah,
Thanks, Mom.
No. But I mean, my path worked out, I think, exactly how it was supposed to work out.
Yeah, because you were able to go, and even though you were able to go, you were still able to come back to our hometown where we were.
Correct, yeah.
And you were the chief resident of your residency class.
Correct,
so
yeah. They actually had not taken foreign medical students prior to that. However, I did a rotation in the ER, which now I work 15 years later.
Yeah, we should preface all this with, yes, she works in the ER now. And
then I ended up going to residency back in my hometown. That was not my initial plan, but I guess God had another plan for me. besides learning medicine in the Caribbean, I learned really a lot about life and what was important on top of it.
Yeah, I can agree with that. With my time, I wouldn't trade it for anything, just because for one of the friends and the experience I had, like just getting to be completely out of the U.S. I mean, while I'm paying a ton for it, I'm sure I'll have some things to say later when the bills start coming in. But it was certainly a unique experience to top it off. And, I learned a lot too in the process. So it's not like I went there and didn't learn anything.
Right. Yeah. You definitely come out of it learning more than just medicine.
Yes, definitely.
Some good life lessons.
Did you know you always wanted to come back to Rome?
No, I had zero plans to come back to Rome.
Because you were one of the few people that, now you can't, but you work in an ER, but you actually went through, I guess, a family medicine residency, but it was an all-inclusive one. But you got grandfathered in because they changed that rule, correct?
Correct. I went to a non-opposed family medicine residency, and I went there with the end goal being to work in that emergency room. I'd actually never been into an emergency room prior to doing my rotation there. And being from a small town, I thought, well, this will be boring. They'll see nothing. And then when I did my rotation there, I was just, I guess, very surprised of the amount of pathology and trauma that came through there, and realized that's what I wanted to do. And a lot of the physicians that were working there actually had went through the family medicine residency program, and it was kind of at that point, I'd say, like a feeder into that emergency room. Since then, we are a level 2 trauma center, and now only taking ER-trained residency graduates. However, if you graduated, I believe it was before 2012, you're kind of grandfathered into the spot.
Mm-hmm. So the rest of us have to do a little bit of extra work to get in.
Correct.
Yeah, they hired you, and then I guess the rest is history because you've been working there ever since. How did you feel when I guess you said you really enjoyed ER. Do you imagine anything else that you would have done? Like, what were you considering besides family medicine? And
well, I didn't really want to go into family medicine.
Oh, okay.
I went to that residency with the sole purpose of working in that ER.
Oh, okay.
And if it didn't work out, I didn't know what I was going to do.
Luckily it did, yeah.
But I really enjoyed my time, and I really liked, I guess, a lot of the rotations. I really liked general surgery. I liked OB. I think what it came down to, I really liked the kind of quick yes, no, and I liked the procedures and the kind of fast-paced thinking
that comes with being
working in the emergency room.
If people don't know you, then they wouldn't understand your workflow, but you can really handle yourself in there with the boys. Like she can really throw down. If there's any competition, she's certainly at the very top of it.
Jordan knows this because he was my scribe.
Yes. It was very interesting because at first I was a scribe for this company, and they didn't actually want me to work with my mom, even though they needed scribes in that ER specifically. So they would want me to work with other doctors, and they were like, oh, we don't want any nepotism going on. And the interesting thing was, that was the hardest job, was working with her, as opposed to, not to say that you're difficult, but keeping up was a difficult task. And so they thought they were like preventing me from getting favors, but the actual reason was I was about to get worked. And then once they realized that she was like, oh no, I'll just work him to death. And they were like, okay, I guess put him with her then. But it was actually really, really great because, you have a very professional workflow, and you really get things done. And to see how efficient you are, and with like seeing patients and like diagnosis, it really is, I don't know, it conditioned me in a way to be used to all of the things that I was seeing. It really helped me out even when I got into medical school. Like there was like a baseline knowledge, like right upper quadrant pain was usually the gallbladder or something, like those 4 quadrants. You didn't know a lot as a scribe, but it definitely helped carrying over. So I will thank you for that. There's a couple awkward moments for sure, like when they were like, hey, we don't want this guy to do drugs, so we'll just let him go see some psych patients. But yeah, was there any times where you were like really happy that you chose the ER, or what interests you about the ER?
I don't know if there's one certain time I guess a lot of things I like about the ER, it is shift work. You don't have an office. You come, you do your job, and you leave. Of course, you do think about your patients, and you do think about probably how you could have done things better, or just kind of replaying scenarios. But you can work as little or as much as you want, and you do have to work nights, holidays, and weekends. But honestly, with the family, you're kind of easier to work around a schedule, I guess.
Yeah, that was
not a 9 to 5.
That was a good thing that happened in my life. When I remember when I was in high school, I had football games like on Friday, and usually you could get somebody to switch because they knew that I would, like, they could work around that schedule. You got to come to, I'm pretty sure every one or most of them. I'm sure you took the L when it came to like some holiday or something. You had to sell your soul for that, but it was very nice to be able to do that. I at least remember that, and that was a huge blessing for me. One thing I guess we had mentioned that you were the chief resident, what were your responsibilities as the chief resident as opposed to being just a regular resident?
I'm pretty sure we had like noon conferences every day, and we had to, find speakers or lecturers for that. But honestly, I honestly can't remember.
I didn't know if there was like an extra pressure, if you were the one that they came to when people started acting.
Well, yeah, you are the one that has to reprimand, and when anything goes wrong, you're the one that has to deal with it. You do the call schedule, and I mean, you're basically the extension of the attendings that you're working for.
Are you glad that you chose that role? Because I know a couple of third years, or I guess they wouldn't be third years, but second years and everything, that actively say that they don't want to do it because of the extra responsibilities.
Yeah, I'm glad. Actually, we were voted into it.
Okay.
So
I think
not only did they not have any foreign medical grads prior to me, I was the first one, and then I also got to be chief resident, so I showed them.
You ruined them, though, because now they bring in all kinds of foreign medical students. She was breaking grounds. How has medicine changed since over your 15 years? Obviously, the grandfathered in clause had to do something.
Electronic medical records, that was a big change and was hard. We used to do paper charting.
Did you start off with the walkie-talkies?
Pretty much. We did.
Nice.
We did.
Or not walkie-talkies, but the tape recorders.
We did. We dictated on tape recorders, and then you had to take the tape out every day and send it, and somebody typed up your notes.
Can you imagine the scribe? They're the person that is the one listening to the random tape recordings you've listed. Captain's log, number 3.
Yeah, and then they printed off your
patient severely obese.
And then you put it in the chart. God, that seems like ages ago. And then in the ER, we started on paper charts. So you could basically chart your whole history and physical in the room while you're listening to them. And then we went to electronic medical records. We used to x-rays, we'd have to look at them on the screen. They'd bring them around and put them up. We'd look on the x-ray box.
Oh, like on the black,
yeah, the light.
Blackboard with the light on it. Oh, God, I don't know. Yeah. You're like hanging photos in a dark room.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we did.
Back in the old days, baby.
We had to actually diagnose and not use CT scans for everything.
How difficult was it? The radiologist, I assume that was still a role. How did he have to come down and look at the x-rays as well? Or did you go to, they would bring us, because we read all our films in the emergency room. We don't read the CAT scan. True. Yeah.
So they would bring us all the plain films, on like the printed off thing. We put it on the light box. And then they would take those and then take them to the radiologist, and he'd read them overnight, and then we'd get the official read.
Okay. So then you'd be like, oh, wow.
Yeah,
missed that. Whoopsie.
Oops. Let's call that patient back.
Yeah. He's at home in bed. Sorry, you have a pneumothorax. I mean, the cool thing about the ER is it's everything. Every day is something new.
Every day is something new. I mean, you're always going to have your pain seekers. Mm-hmm. You're always going to have your psych patients.
I just had a flashback to that. There was one time I remember I was a scribe, and that bus had flipped over with some kids, so they had all come. And then there was also like a lady that was wearing her pink motorcycle helmet that had come in because she had gotten somehow in the wreck
on her moped.
But she wore her helmet the whole time. She flipped the and there was just a lot of chaos that day. I remember I was just thinking, I was like, because that was just new things, and then somebody's like, you know,
and then you're going to have
scrotal pain.
Yeah, you're really sad cases. I mean, it's
You have said though, I do remember this, that you got to thank you like twice.
Yeah, twice in 15 years.
That's nice.
That's unheard of.
Yeah, she's really breaking new grounds. I will say the one thing that is different from me scribing in a bunch of locations when I was like before I even started medical school is everybody comes back to their cardiologist or their orthopedic surgeons like, man, you did a great job. Maybe they're upset, so they don't, but they're like, oh, I love you, man. You saved my life. Like I brought you a gift. In the ER, it's usually like, I remember you, you know, and then they're like, I had a terrible time here last time, or, you know, like it's never, but you've gotten a couple thank yous, and I have people, I remember one person came back and just to say thank you or whatever. So
yeah, I've had a few of those.
We're joking around, but it really, there should be you should thank your ER doctors every now and then. I guess another thing that's kind of changed, I mean, I don't know how much you would know about this, but I know that they've been bringing in more PAs or nurse practitioners into the roles, and I guess that's another thing that has changed.
Correct.
How is that?
I guess when I started.
When it start, was there as many?
We had one, maybe two shifts for mid-level, and now we have 4 to 5 shifts a day for mid-levels. But we have, I guess, more volume than when I initially started.
Oh, okay. Do you think that has kind of like helped or hurt or?
I mean, it helps the flow. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the only thing, you know, I guess everything comes with a repercussion, right? So it probably helps with the flow, but it definitely makes it harder, you know, if you're a struggling student trying to decide if you wanted to go into emergency medicine, it kind of just makes it a little bit difficult in that regard because you don't know where everything's going to be. But that's a future down the line, I guess we'll have to discuss.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
One thing I guess I did realize when I was scribing is the flow of information. Sometimes you can get a patient and know nothing about them, even though you know that they've seen but because they're not in the system or they're from out of town or whatever. I was like, because there was one guy that had all these heart issues one time. He came from the cardiology clinic, but then he went to Florida and he fell or broke his leg. But they had no idea that he had, you know, had a couple stents and everything else. And they were trying to get the records and blah, blah, blah. And so it's just like the back and forth talk between the systems, I guess, because you sometimes see people and you have no idea anything about them. You know, hopefully they have an ID. If they're not speaking, you're like,
That's what we do, though.
I know, yeah. That's the exciting part about it, I think, is you're the first line.
Figure out what's going on with little to no information, and then be judged on it later.
Yeah. Is that a difficult part of your job, is like maybe the oversight? Because that's the thing, right, is sometimes you can't know everything about a patient when they come in, they don't have an ID and they're not speaking. And then you can look at the labs later and be like, Monday morning quarterback or whatever, and be like, oh, why did they do this?
Yeah, I mean, but I guess people could do that. But I mean, our job, I feel, is to walk in a room and recognize sick versus non-sick. What do I need to do for you right now to help you? And then what's my plan? What's my disposition?
I mean, that makes a ton of sense. So if you can
figure out sick versus sick and what you need to do for them, you figure out half the battle in emergency medicine, I think.
That's good.
Because your job is not to figure out the complete, I don't know how to say, the whole illness from the beginning to the end.
Yes, and the pathology.
You need to, and then you got to figure out a disposition. Can they go home, or do they need to come in the hospital for a further workup? And we send people home sick, not sick to die, but I mean, people go home if you feel like they can, and some people are not 100% cured, but they can go follow up outpatient. But as long as you can recognize sick or not sick and what you need to do to help them right now.
Because that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize about the emergency department too, is if you're not very, very sick, say you're bleeding from your rectum, but you're not very, very sick, you don't have to spend the night in the hospital.
Right.
If the job of you is just to determine what's going on.
Right.
And so, yeah. Do you ever get it where people sometimes do Monday morning quarterback and then they feel the need to chime in?
All the time.
All the time? Yeah, it's like that could be, I feel like that happens a good amount, is where people like to just give their 2 cents.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're the first person on the job, so everybody else gets to see, even from being in my IM rotation, you get to see what the ER physician did. It's really easy to say, oh, I wouldn't have done that, as opposed to, I have no idea what's wrong with this person, throw the sink.
I mean, I was guilty of it when I was a resident and admitting.
And you're like, what are these people thinking?
They don't know
crazy.
anything.
Yeah. With COVID happening and everything like that, we don't have to, I'd hate to bring up COVID too much and have to get a disclaimer put on this episode. No, just kidding. But with the whole situation and it being in the ER, like, how did things change your day to day? Or I know most of it, but I'm just asking too. I mean,
like the flow.
Flow. I mean, now you are this is kind of in the a little bit past the peak of Omicron, but your ER has been packed,
right?
As of recently.
Most people have. I mean, obviously, like most ERs, right when it hit, honestly, nobody was coming into any ER because everybody was
scared to get it.
And then people were coming in really sick because they were holding out. I think a lot of ERs now are just seeing a lot of volume. They're overloaded. They're holding patients. We're
is it a lot of
ICU.
COVID, or is it?
It's just a mixture. I mean, we're holding ICU patients. We're holding patients for the hospital. I think it's just a common theme across most ERs right now.
Since I guess I brought up COVID, how do you continue your medical education? Like, how do you learn the ins and outs, especially because COVID's one of those main things too, where everything is brand new or people are finding stuff new out every day.
Well, I read articles, I listen to podcasts, journals, podcasts, CMEs. I mean,
Yeah, because there's a specific, like the podcasts that you're referring to are like those are like actual emergency physician people that are doing the podcast, like about like you're paying into, you're
MRAP,
it's not just like a Spotify podcast, like it's, you pay, I guess, or I don't even know if you pay into it, but you
pay and then you get CMEs for it.
Yeah. And these are actual people talking about the protocol and what we should do and be up to date. I really think it's amazing, instead of just doing conferences every week and hoping to God people pay attention in their weekly Zoom conference, like that you can have a podcast where people are discussing the actual thing, and you can kind of get your information on the go, because you'll listen to it when you work out and stuff.
Right.
But that's a great way to continue your education while doing it. But yeah, so because I feel like with all the COVID stuff, I mean, you don't have to know the whole thing, but things are changing left and right. So it's got to be difficult to stay on top of it. But you said ERcast was like one of the
MRAP. I mean, they're all over.
They're all Reader's Digest. You know.
No, I can't think of the other. Up to Date's a good one. You can access.
Oh God, I love Up to Date.
Yeah,
that's about the only way I can get any projects done nowadays. I have to look everything up there. I realize how little I know about everything when I start looking at some up-to-date articles. Another thing that you've done, as opposed to medicine, or as opposed to just being an ER physician, but you also owned a wellness clinic and everything here in Rome, Georgia. You didn't just you were like helping a whole nother side of the medical field. Right.
It started off as something fun and interesting, just wellness, weight loss, kind of turned a little bit into aesthetics, and just kind of had a lot of things that I just did on the side.
She ran it for multiple years, and then with COVID and everything, it kind of just became not profitable. I mean, people started staying inside. Just was not worth it. But I thought it was interesting because while you work a lot in the ER, you pick up just as you're probably one of the people that are doing more at the most shifts or around the top. You would also, on your only off days, would have scheduled appointments, like starting at 8:00, you know, like the one day she would sleep in, she'd be out the door before everybody else, you know, having things to do. I was just like impressed that you could even run two things at the same time. I mean, I guess it just started as an enjoyable thing that you wanted to do.
And something fun that, well, my husband owns a gym, so kind of got into weight loss and vitamins and kind of hormone replacement, and just started looking to it, and then it just kind of grew from there. It just
yeah. I mean, you had a lot of great things. She even had an oxygen bar, I believe, at one point. That's how you can get your eucalyptus smelling oxygen. It was fantastic. I thought that was a really cool business venture or whatever that you had taken. And it also showed that, you can do things with your license outside of just being, the regular physician.
Right.
Which that gives me hope in case I become an ER physician and there's no jobs left.
You can always...
I'll be a scribe.
Yeah, go back to a scribe.
Woo! I did not go to 4 years of evil doctor school to become...
You can read my EKGs.
There you go. I mean, I would do that. I don't know if I could do it correctly. There's that moment when you're looking at an EKG and you kind of, I know I can read it, but I want to glance up in the top right-hand corner.
Make sure you're
and they're like kind of covering it, but you're like, how long are the lines? Like, is there more than 3 lines?
The machine's always right, isn't it?
God. Well, the worst is when they're showing it to you and it's like normal sinus rhythm and you're like, I don't know. I think it's normal sinus rhythm. And you're like, nope. Why is the machine wrong? And it's like, they got you. They were playing you like a fool. One thing that also has always impressed me is, and that you've always had like a kind of happy attitude, kind of like, these are my people. Even when something went, crazy would happen, you just kind of laughed it off and really enjoyed your time in the ER. How do you prevent like burnout after 15 years?
That's a good question because I don't know. I thought about that, and I guess one of the main reasons I guess it's just I'm at my calling. I think that my path took me to where I am right now. And don't get me wrong, there are days that I don't want to be there. I don't want to work as much. I'm frustrated with the people. I'm frustrated with myself. But as a whole, I think that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
I kind of know how you feel. Like when I'm in the ER, for some reason, and it might be because of you. That's why I can't determine if it's like conditioning or what, but I get a little smirk. I'm like, oh, what am I about to run into?
Right. It's
like there's a little bit of some excitement to it that it like draws me in. I always want to go swing by.
Yeah, I guess it's when where you're. I just can't think of any. I mean, I would do other medicine if that's what I had to do, but I think that I chose the correct path for me.
I know that it was the correct path. I could, heaven forbid, you being a family practitioner, you'd be running over people in the hallway. Just because I know she can be ferocious with the chart grabbing.
And my little bit of ADHD, that it works out well in the ER.
Yeah.
Talk to EMS, sign EKGs, answer phone calls, and put orders in all at the same time.
Yeah, that's what kind of led me there. I was like, if there's not people yelling at me for some reason, then I start to get like antsy. I'm like, oh, somebody's got to be watching me and just taking notes. And at least if somebody's, and then I get to the ER and everybody's yelling at it. Hey, I'm
back home with my people.
Take me there. Do you have any advice for me or any of the future physicians that may be listening? Advice to pass down? Any gems of wisdom? Okay. While she's thinking, I want to say one thing. I am very, very blessed to have a mother that is an emergency physician, or just how she is, because there is I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this. Maybe it's like the workflow of medicine, for one, I was taught earlier. One thing she always used to say to me and I started this podcast because I love having conversations, but she would always say, stop talking. Always. Maybe. And sometimes I would say one thing, like one word, and she'd be like, stop talking. I didn't realize it at the time, but it prepared me. There's a lot of times now that I'm in the hospital and somebody starts speaking and I just look at them, I'm like, oh God, stop talking. I think to myself, I'm like, thank God I'm not talking right now.
Shut up before you make yourself look stupid.
Yeah, that happened a lot too. Yeah, there's no fallacies. I couldn't ever slide anything by her. Like if I said something and it was a little off, she'd be like, don't speak unless you know exactly what you're saying. There was some great tidbits in there that I didn't catch on till later. I will say, though, that growing up around there is a way different thing. You learn medicine, but then interacting with your coworkers and being being part of the team is totally different. And I am blessed because I
I learned a little bit, at least. I didn't, I make mistakes all the time, but just kind of like how I should conduct myself in that space, she humbled me real quick. Yeah, I guess I'm blessed for that now. I'm thanking you. It might sound like a backhanded comment, or compliment, but I really am gracious because, I learned a lot, and I am prone to talk. So every time I talk now in the hospital, I think to myself, I'm like, should I be talking right now? And I'm like, okay, I'm fine. Yeah. But it has helped a lot instead of getting yelled at as a student. It's like, because there can be some bad students.
Yes. And some mean attendings.
Yeah, that's the thing is when you see somebody talking and the mean attendings walking by, you're like, dude, please, you're going to get us all in trouble. I will say that I believe that I got my workflow from you as well, because you are relentless in a way that I like to think of myself as. If I have to show up every day on your front step to get this job or whatever, then I would do it. And I learned that because you were that way. You're like, oh, you want this, and you better be willing to do it every day. And that was also a blessing too, or one of those like life lessons that you learn. If we're passing down, be relentless, because people.
Yes, and don't let anybody ever tell you can't do it.
Yeah, because you're proof of that. I'm sure a lot of people doubted you during your time, but now you're big shot, HBIC. Yeah, and I think you even said you saw like 10,000 patients or something last year. Was that might be? And now I might have spoken before I knew the answers.
You might have. I don't know.
I believe so, though. I think I wrote that down. I hope that's not the whole ER. And then, just gave you credit for everybody in the ER.
No, we see about 80,000.
Okay, I think I'm right then about that. Okay, Mom, I got to ask you one thing, because I guess I hear a lot, and you get to see every style of doctor that comes to the ER, right? Or at least the ones that are on call. Is there a stereotype to each style of physician?
Like what you think, like
what do you think when you think of a neurologist? Like do you think of, because like you always think of like ortho bros. They come in, they work with their hands,
Right. I guess there's kind of maybe a general personality of that group, because that is, I guess, what attracts you to that type of medicine.
Mm-hmm.
But where I work, we actually have a great community of physicians, and most of them, I'll say most, are relatively easy to work with. But I have heard horror stories about, certain types of doctors being very hard to deal with.
Yeah. Is there any style of doctor that is more difficult to deal with, or what practice is more likely to yell at you?
Good question. Probably to get upset, probably general surgery or ortho, but it could also be that they're the main ones that we're calling and annoying all the time.
Yeah.
We're the ones calling in the middle of the night.
I've heard some horror stories of, someone doing the wrong thing down in the ER, and general surgeon comes in, tears the place up. But how long are you planning on working? Like, do you want to work? I know you have one person at your ER that's like 78.
Right. He's actually 79 and will be 80.
So you're going to work till you're 82 then?
Yeah, I'm going to beat him. No, yeah. I think he says he could be self-proclaimed the oldest practicing ER phisian, at least in Georgia, but we haven't self-checked that.
I'm not going to fact check it. Yeah, I'm not going to fact check it. So we'll just take Dr. Malcolm's word for it. We might have to get him on here. He would be a spicy one. Did you ever consider doing anything else besides working in the ER? The unique thing about emergency medicine is they kind of need you in multiple different things. Like I know you can go work on cruise ships or do something like that. Have you ever considered, getting the free cruise and spending the time?
Or like traveling?
Or traveling?
No, honestly, but I guess I haven't, because I've had kids and I haven't really... I had to be more stable and be at home, so I haven't actually entertained that thought. I don't know what'll happen when
everybody
the last one's gone, so we'll just have to see.
Well, you've got still some years before that. Yeah, you're probably never getting rid of all the kids.
Probably not.
When one kid disappears, 3 animals appear, so it's slowly becoming a barn. Is there any hope to pay off the student loan?
Yes,
because right
absolutely.
now it looks impossible.
Yes, it's just about obviously working hard and then just setting your priorities of where you want to allocate your money when you make it. Some people, their number one priority is paying their loans off. So they drive the same car and maybe live in the same house or similar house that they did in residency, and they pay their loans off first. It's just about priorities and what you want to do with your money.
Do you have your loans paid off?
I have about one more year, but I did not set it as my number one priority at first. If I had that to change, I probably would have.
Would you do that in hindsight or whatever?
Probably. I mean, it has a very, very low interest rate, I guess less than a house payment or car payments, but I probably would, so it wouldn't be hanging over your head.
I'm just praying on Biden or somebody to come take it away from me, because at this point it looks like a astronomical number. It looks like you couldn't finish that within a lifetime. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's a common occurrence where people will like pull up our debt, and then it'll be like 1, 2, 3. I'll show you mine if you show me yours, and then it's just like
you're just hoping yours isn't the highest.
It's like a Wild West draw. Yeah, I'm getting shot down a lot, but yeah,
married for money. No, I'm just playing.
Yeah, that's. I might need a sugar mama, even with the MD. They're like, oh, I didn't know you were looking for a sugar mama. Aren't you a doctor? Still need one. Yeah, that's the funny thing is I've met up with some of my friends, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're so successful. That's awesome." And I'm like, "I'm the brokest person here by far." And then they were like, "I got $20,000 in debt."
Yeah, that's nothing.
I'm about to blow your mind right now. And then they're like, "Wow, you are broke." But yeah. So, Mom, with the job market, how it is and everything, do you think that it is a good idea to go into emergency medicine now? I know that at least, on Med Twitter and everything else, it's pretty dicey in the job market with people coming out and trying to go in.
That's actually something we've talked about a lot at work and with the new grads. We recently hired 3 new grads in, I guess, August, and asking them, I guess their opinions. That's actually a good question. I mean, would I go into it? Yes, because I know that, like I said earlier, I think that's my calling. I think that's where I was led to be. And I think that if that's where you feel like you're led to be, you'll be successful. I know where I work right now, we're looking for several physicians. So right now, to us, it doesn't feel like there's a shortage. But
you might have a ton of job applications after
yeah, exactly.
in the next couple months. But yeah, I know that some of the issue is kind of there's just less job availability. Like, I know that mid-levels and everything, they've kind of taken a bigger role when it comes to the emergency room.
But they've also opened up more ER residency. So they graduated more residents.
Exactly.
And then COVID hit. And so I think they needed more ER physicians. They created more residencies, graduated more. COVID hit. On top of it, hours got cut. And so.
It's interesting because and we were just talking about you getting grandfathered in and everything, is that some of those people that were working in those ER jobs would not have been able to stay at those high-level trauma centers, and yet there's still, I guess, a surplus. Like there's still a lack of jobs, even though they cut some of the people that would be applying for that job, whether it be the family medicine.
Right, and they're still allowed to, if they graduate, I think it was after, don't quote me on it, I think it was 2015, I think. They are still working in ERs. They're just not level 2 or higher. Yeah. Right. So,
but now you can't at all, right?
No, you can. You just can't work at a level 2 or level 1 facility.
Okay. So you could go into family medicine now and still go work at the ER
a smaller
as long as
ER.
It was like a level 3.
As long as they hired. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that was a couple people that were working with you.
Yeah. And we have some sister hospitals, Polk Medical Center, Cherokee Medical Center, and they work there. And we actually have a hospital across town, Redmond, that have some family practice doctors that can't work at our facility, amongst ER trained. But,
okay.
So you can still go into emergency medicine, but I don't know what's going to change in the future.
Yeah, I mean, the
it might be less and less with.
I mean, that's the interesting thing, right? Is none of us know the future, but it feels like online, everything, people are acting like you'll never get a job and blah, blah, blah. But then you actually said something that was interesting the other day, that when you were applying for residency and everything, they said that the ER was also not the place to apply, right? You said something about how the job market was failing in the ER, even in like 70 something.
No, I saw something on Facebook, the EM Docs, where there was something on, I'd have to look for it, a Time magazine that said ER was a dying field or something. I'd have to look through the.
But I thought it was funny because they said that, or whenever it was, and yet it's still like, so it's still kicking. Nobody's
people are still having emergencies.
You still have hope. Yeah. Everybody's always going to have an emergency. I think it's definitely I think it's a very interesting style of medicine to learn, and probably one of the most beneficial. You know, you won't always have a operating room if something bad happens, but being trained in emergency medicine is, you know, it's pretty handy. At least, you know, it's good when punting the ball. No,
yeah.
I think there's still opportunity and everything, or at least I hope. But it has been tricky over the past couple years, because just seeing how at least people online and, you know, Twitter and everything else, they make their complaints, and there's not a lot of market or lobbying from doctors. And so it just ends up with less people being able to, leaving a foundation for other people to stand on.
Right. But I think that you should, it sounds quirky, but go with what your heart tells you. Mm-hmm. And if it feels like it's where you need to be, then it's where you need to be.
That's a good answer. Yeah, I think it was something like you had found some article or something saying that emergency medicine has been dead since whatever time frame or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, it was just a post on Facebook on EM Docs that someone had posted, and it said, "I found this magazine in one of my piles of stuff in the home office. It was published a couple weeks after I graduated from college. Apparently, EM has been collapsing for the last 31 years, not just the last 2 years." And so they've posted a thing from May 28, 1990, an article, you know, from a magazine. Mm-hmm. And that on, I guess, Time magazine, that put emergency, overwhelmed and understaffed. Medicine's front lines are collapsing across America.
Well, maybe they fixed that and overstaffed it now.
Yeah. It only took them, 21 years?
Yeah. Now it's swinging in the other direction.
Or 31 years. I'm sorry.
I certainly think there's opportunity. And like you said, your place is still hiring and everything. And I really like what you said about, you know, if you feel drawn to it in a similar way that I do, you should go for it no matter what. I mean, don't go for it because if you want to have easy hours or, you know, not be relaxed, I mean, it might not be the best reason to go into it, but it's certainly a calling.
Agreed.
But yeah, well, Mom, I just want to talk to you a little bit. Do you have anything that you would like to say or anything? We're going to wrap this one up here shortly.
No, just I'm proud of you.
Yeah, well, that's flattering. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. If you get sick, anybody, and you go to Floyd Medical Center, you will be taken care of very well. If she's a blonde doctor, she's got you. She'd probably be, I don't think there's any other, well, there's very few women in general, but
two.
The really fit blonde doctor, you'll know who she is. But yeah, it's been a real pleasure, and you've been such a blessing, or at least a role model to me. And so I wanted to share that, and hope everybody else enjoyed it as well. And thank you, friends. Thank you for listening.
Hey everyone, I want to take this time to tell you about our friends over at TrueLearn. They have this top-of-the-line test bank that is perfect for any upcoming board exams that you may have. They have test banks for all types of exams. So whether you're studying for medical school, nursing school, OT, pharmacy, and others like speech pathology, TrueLearn is the way to go. If you're like me and going through medical school, they have question banks for all the big exams, like Step 1, Step 2, and Step 3, with quality assessments for each exam. Look, I know we didn't go into healthcare because we love taking tests. This is the hard part of the job. Make it easy on yourself with TrueLearn. Sign up now with the code OFFWHITECOAT to get $25 off your purchase. That's OFF WHITECOAT, no spaces, to get $25 off your purchase. This is a test bank that you do not want to pass up on. Make this easy on yourself. Take the deal, pass your boards, and get back to enjoying the reason you went into healthcare. And make sure to use off-white coat when you pick it up.